MaryRuth is best known for its multivitamins, but the company also sells a hair growth formula. Most of the ingredients are the same, but there are a few additions. The question is whether those additions actually transform it from a standard multivitamin into a supplement that meaningfully supports hair growth. The biggest difference is the inclusion of Lustriva, an ingredient that MaryRuth claims to have been clinically studied. The problem is once you look closely, several major weaknesses make the findings far less convincing than they initially sound. The most obvious issue is the tiny sample size. The study included only 12 women, which is far too small to draw reliable conclusions. The participants themselves also raised concerns. These were generally healthy women, not people with actual hair loss. That means the results don't necessarily tell us anything about whether the product would actually help someone dealing with hair thinning. Another major limitation is that the study was open label and didn't include a placebo group, meaning participants knew they were taking a product that was supposed to improve their hair, skin, and nails. When people expect a treatment to work, they're more likely to expect improvements, even if no meaningful change has occurred. The outcomes measured in the study were also based on self-reported surveys rather than objective measurements. Participants were asked whether their hair seemed thicker, whether their skin looked healthier, or whether facial lines appeared less noticeable. Those questions measure perception, not actual biological changes, and perceptions can be strongly influenced by expectations. Participants were also given free products and compensated with gift cards for completing surveys. While this isn't automatically a red flag, it can encourage more favorable responses, especially in a small, non-blinded study that relies heavily on subjective feedback. There's also another problem. The study didn't test Lustriva on its own. Participants used both oral capsules and a topical hair serum at the same time. As a result, the study can't tell us whether Lustriva itself was responsible for any observed effects. Finally, the study was funded by the company behind the product. Now, industry funding doesn't automatically make research invalid, but manufacturer-sponsored studies are more likely to report positive outcomes than independently funded research. Taken together, this study is better viewed as a consumer satisfaction survey than actual clinical evidence. The absence of blinding, placebo controls, objective outcome measures, and an adequate sample size means the results do not provide convincing support for the claim that Lustriva improves hair, skin, or nail health. And that really shouldn't be surprising when you look at what Lustriva actually contains. It's a proprietary blend of inositol-stabilized arginine silicate and magnesium biotinate. In practical terms, it mainly provides biotin and the amino acid L-arginine, along with smaller amounts of silicone, inositol, and magnesium. By the way, I review a lot of supplements here, so subscribe and hit the bell to stay updated. And support me on Ko-fi if you enjoy the content. L-arginine is an amino acid that the body uses to produce nitric oxide, which helps relax and widen blood vessels, which is why arginine is sometimes marketed to athletes looking to improve blood flow and exercise performance. The problem is that there's no human clinical evidence showing that arginine promotes hair growth. And even when arginine does provide benefits in other areas of health, the doses used are typically much larger, sometimes more than 20 grams per day in athletic settings. The tiny milligram amounts found in MaryRuth's formula are unlikely to have any meaningful effect. MaryRuth also includes a much larger dose of biotin, more than 30 times the amount found in the regular version. That's a bit odd because the original formula already contains plenty of biotin, providing roughly 10 times the recommended daily intake. Hair supplements love loading up on biotin because it's inexpensive, safe, and widely associated with healthy hair. But when you actually look at the research, the evidence is surprisingly underwhelming. In fact, only one study has specifically tested biotin as a treatment for hair loss. In that study, people with a type of hair loss called alopecia areata received injections containing both biotin and vitamin B5. While some participants experienced improvements, the study had several major limitations. Most importantly, it did not include a placebo group, making it impossible to know whether the benefits were actually caused by the treatment or simply the result of placebo. To make matters even more complicated, biotin was combined with vitamin B5 and delivered by injection, so the study cannot tell us whether biotin taken as an oral supplement would have had any effect. The evidence for nail health is not much stronger. One small study found that people with brittle nail syndrome developed thicker nails and experienced less splitting after taking biotin supplements. However, this study also lacked a placebo group. Beyond these studies, most of the remaining evidence comes from case reports, where doctors observed improvements in individual patients after biotin supplementation. The problem is that case reports are among the weaker forms of evidence. They lack control groups, randomization, and large sample sizes, making it difficult to determine whether the supplement actually caused the improvement. So does biotin actually help with hair and nail growth? For most people, probably not. The limited evidence available suggests that any benefits are largely confined to people with specific conditions, such as alopecia areata or brittle nail syndrome, rather than individuals with normal hair or nails. Some people may point to biotin deficiency as a reason to take biotin supplements, and it's true that a severe deficiency can contribute to hair loss and other symptoms. However, genuine biotin deficiency is actually very rare among people eating a normal balanced diet. Biotin is found in many common foods, including dairy products, egg, meat, nuts, and seeds. On top of that, the body only requires about 30 micrograms per day, an amount that's easily obtained through food alone. So for the average healthy adult in North America, needing a biotin supplement is unlikely to be necessary. There are, however, a few groups that face a higher risk. Rare genetic disorders can impair biotin metabolism, although these conditions affect fewer than 1 in 100,000 births. Certain medications may also interfere with biotin levels. Research has also found lower biotin levels in some older adults, people with alcohol use disorders, and smokers, particularly women. Mild biotin deficiency also appears to be relatively common during pregnancy and breastfeeding. At first glance, that might suggest biotin supplements could be helpful for these groups. However, when researchers compare people with hair loss to those without it, they generally don't find meaningful differences in biotin levels. In other words, even when mild deficiency is present, correcting it won't necessarily lead to noticeable thicker hair or less hair shedding. Put simply, most people struggling with hair loss are unlikely to be deficient in biotin in the first place. Another ingredient often promoted for hair health is silicone. Like biotin, silicone sounds promising in theory, but the human evidence is surprisingly limited. One small study found that women with fine hair who took 10 milligrams of silicone daily experienced small improvements in hair thickness and strength. However, the study did not show new hair growth, increased follicle numbers, or reversal of baldness. At best, the findings suggest silicone may slightly improve the appearance or quality of existing hair. So does MaryRuth's multi plus hair growth actually work? If you have a significant nutritional deficiency or a specific condition such as brittle nail syndrome, you might notice a small improvement in hair or nail quality. But for the vast majority of healthy people, there's little reason to expect meaningful improvements in actual hair growth. At roughly $70 per month, MaryRuth's Multi Plus Hair Growth is essentially a multivitamin with extra biotin. A quality multivitamin costs around $10 to $15 a month, and biotin supplements run about $2 to $3 a month. Altogether, that's only $12 to $18 a month. Rating MaryRuth's Multi Plus Hair Growth by effectiveness for improving hair loss, I'm giving it a D. Unless you have significant nutritional deficiencies, it's unlikely to make much difference in your hair or nails. Rating it by cost, I'm giving it a D. The formula can be replicated for a fraction of the cost. Rating for safety, I'm giving it a B. The ingredients and doses used are unlikely to be of much cause for concern. Overall rating, I'm giving a D. I would not recommend it at all. Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Yeung. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to share them in the comments down below. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And if you know someone who could benefit from this, please share it with them. Finally, if you enjoy what we do and want to learn more, consider supporting us on Ko-fi, and be sure to check out our other socials as well.